I move to place the following matters on the consent agenda. 14.01 regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning applications and a license, charge number 2017, EYRT 1669. Direct the department staff and the Attorney General's office to prepare the documents necessary to request a formal hearing for the annulment of the holder alternative teacher license, and direct the chair of the State Board of Education to sign the denial order considering the applicant's initial teacher license application and one-year substitute authorization application. 14.02 regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning a credential, charge number 2018 JMM H133, signify the acceptance and approval of the terms and conditions of the settlement agreement by directing the chair of the State Board to sign the agreement. 1403 regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning a license, charge number 2018 CPJC 278, signify the acceptance and approval of the terms and conditions of the settlement agreement by directing the chair of the State Board to sign the agreement. 14.04 approve the 7 initial emergency authorization requests as set forth in the published agenda. 14.05 approve East Central BOCES request for an added endorsement and initial special education endorsement as set forth in the published agenda. 14.06 approve Fort Lewis College's initial request for an alternative preparation program with special education added endorsement as set forth in the published agenda. 14.07 approve Fort Lewis College's request for authorization of a special education generalist endorsement as set forth in the published agenda. 14.08 approve University of Denver's request for authorization of 3 additional educator preparation endorsements, including Gifted Education Corps, Gifted Education Specialist, and Director of Gifted Education as set forth in the published agenda. 14.09 approve University of Colorado Denver's request for the culturally and linguistically diverse education endorsement as set forth in the published agenda. 14.10 approve San Luis Valley BOCES request for an amendment to their alternative education preparation program as set forth in the published agenda. 14.11 approve University of Colorado Colorado Springs request for an amendment to their alternative education preparation program as set forth in the published agenda. 14.12 approve Douglas County School District's request for individualized alternative principal preparation program for Deborah L. Courtbaoui. 15.02 approve the 2018-19 funding allocations to the boards of cooperative education services, BOCES, as set forth in the published agenda. 16.03, 16.06, 16.03 through 16.06, and 16.08 through 16.13. Approve the charter waiver request items 16.03 through 16.06 and 16.08 through 16.13, inclusive, as set forth in the published agenda. 17.01 approve the recommendations for the 2018-2019 Student Wellness Grant recipients and amount of grant awards as set forth in the published agenda. 17.02 approve the recommendations for the 2018-2019 School Counselor Corps Grant recipients and amount of grant awards as set forth in the published agenda. This is the end of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Board Member Rankin. That's a proper motion. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Board Member Flores. Any objection? Any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is a report from the Director of Board Relations, Ms. Cordial. What do you have for us today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and good morning to members of the board and Commissioner Anthus. First I'd like to introduce Melissa Bloom, sitting next to me. She will be shadowing me a little bit today and then again at the August board meeting, and will run the September board meeting for me in my absence. So I have a lot of gratitude for Melissa. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'd like to also just give my friendly reminder to please speak clearly into your microphones for both board members, commissioner, and presenters. Those of you needing to connect to CDE's guest wireless, locate the CDE hotspot. Password is still silver, capital S. In your board packets, you have the following. You have your quick glance expense report. You have your events calendar. And as I mentioned last month, just a few upcoming events that you all have for June and July is the National Forum on Education Policy in DC, which is June 27th through 29th, and then the CASE Summer Convention, which is July 23rd through 27th. In your board packets and or available on board docs are the following for Wednesday, June 13th. For item 9.01, you have a memo concerning the proposed final written determination for Minot Elementary School, as well as the copy of the final draft determination. For item 11.01, you have a memo concerning the science, comprehensive health, and physical education, and reading, writing, and communicating standards, the accompanying PowerPoint, the State Board's proposed amendments document for the health standards, the committee response document to those amendments, an overview of the topics related to drugs and alcohol and the health standards, the public feedback on the health standards, State Board proposed amendments for reading, writing, and communicating standards, again, the committee's response document to those amendments, public feedback received on the reading, writing, and communicating standards, and then a copy of the committee's proposal for all three of the standards. For item 13.01, you have a memo concerning Falcon 49's request for waiver pursuant to 22-2-117 CRS, their accompanying PowerPoint, their waiver application, and then the CDE staff response document. For item 14.04, you have a memo concerning the 7 initial emergency authorization requests. For item 14.05, you have a memo concerning East Central BOCES request for an added endorsement and initial special education endorsement. For item 14.06, you have a memo concerning Fort Lewis College's initial request for an alternative preparation program with special education added endorsements ages 5 through 21. For item 14.07, you have a memo concerning Fort Lewis College's request for authorization of a special education generalist endorsement. For item 14.07, you have a memo concerning University of Denver's request for authorization of 3 additional educator preparation endorsements. For item 14.09, you have a memo concerning the University of Colorado Denver's culturally and linguistically diverse endorsement. For item 14.10, you have a memo concerning the San Luis Valley BOCES request for an amendment to their alternative educator preparation program and their supporting materials. For item 14.11, you have a memo concerning University of Colorado Colorado Springs request for an amendment to their alternative educator preparation program, as well as their supporting materials. For item 14.02, you have a memo concerning Douglas County School District's request for an individual alternative principal preparation program. For item 15.01, you have a memo concerning the Building Excellent Schools Today Best Grant Awards, the prioritized grant list and summaries, as well as the best grant recommendations broken out by congressional district and by the map. For item 15.02, you have a memo concerning the BOCES funding allocations for fiscal year 18-19 and the final recommended allocations list. For item 16.01, you have a memo concerning the certification of a multi-district online request from Huerfano School District RE1 on behalf of Career Academies of America, Colorado PTEC, as well as their supporting materials. For item 16.02, you have a memo concerning the multi-district online request from Pueblo County School District 70 on behalf of 70 Online, as well as their supporting materials. For items 16.03 through 16.13, you have memos and supporting materials pertaining to the charter school waiver requests. For item 17.01, you have a memo concerning the Student Wellness Grant Program and recommended grantee list. And for item 17.02, you have a memo concerning the School Counselor Corps Grant Program and recommended grantee list. For for Thursday, June 14th, you have the following. For item 3.01, a memo concerning the rules for the administration of the statewide system to evaluate effectiveness of licensed personnel employed by school districts and boards of cooperative services, 1 CCR 301-87, an accompanying PowerPoint, which accompanies all 3 educator talent rules, a red line and clean copy of the rules and rules to statute crosswalk. For item 3.02, you have a memo concerning the rules for the Colorado Educator Licensing Act of 91, 1 CCR 301-37, a red line and clean copy of the rules and rules to statute crosswalk, and then additional comments we've received since the May meeting. For item 3.03, you have a memo regarding the rules for the administration of the educator licensure endorsements, 1 CCR 301-101, a red line and clean copy of those rules and additional comments we've received since the May meeting. For item 4.01, you have the 2018 legislative session recap PowerPoint. For item 5.01, you have a memo concerning the fiscal year 1920 strategic budget discussion. For item 7.01, you have a memo concerning Jefferson County Public Schools request for innovation on behalf of Free Horizon Montessori, their accompanying PowerPoint and their supporting materials for this request. For item 8.01, I'm almost done. You have a memo concerning the Teacher Grants for Computer Science Education Grant Awards, their accompanying PowerPoint, and the Round 2 grant recommendations. For item 8.02, you have a memo concerning the notice of rulemaking for the Teacher Grants for Computer Science Education Program, 1 CCR 301-100, their accompanying PowerPoint, a red line and clean copy of the rules and rules to statute crosswalk. For item 8.03, you have a notice of rulemaking for the Colorado English Language Proficiency Act, 1 CCR 301-10, again, a red line and clean copy of the rules and rules to statute crosswalk. For item 4.0, actually, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right, the next item on our agenda is the report from Commissioner Anthus. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see you. So we have wrapped up another school year, put that one in the books. And I know that our districts are, a couple weeks ago, were hard at work wrapping up the school year, and now they're doing all of their professional development moving forward through the summer. I do want to just share, as we were wrapping up the school year too, we have continued to try to put some good news stories out there about great programs that are going across our state. And so we just finished our video of the latest Teacher of the Year. And we also have a video of Lake County School District, who has worked really, really hard to improve their student performance and have seen some great success. And so we did a video of their success story, and I'll make sure that you guys get the link to those videos. They are up on our website as well. But part of my efforts is I'm a believer in positive motivates positive. So let's share some of the good news that's going on out there in the schools. I had the opportunity to visit Mesa 51. They invited me to come up and kick off their professional development series for their teachers and educators across their district. They were there about, I'll get the number wrong, but around 300 to 500 educators were there 2 days after their school, the last day of school, to start in on their professional development, and was able to just share some of my leadership perspective as they embarked on their professional development. So that was a fun activity. Our CDE staff here at the department is working hard on legislative implementation. So I know we all take a big sigh of relief once the legislative session is over. But actually that's when our work just begins. So I won't steal too much of the thunder from tomorrow, but I will just say that about 110 education-related bills were introduced this year, and 67 of those bills passed. So those are 67 new bills that we need to be paying attention to and helping our districts and state agencies implement. In the process, CDE responded to 134 fiscal note requests. So if you wonder what our staff is up to during the legislative session, that's often what we're up to, is responding to the myriad of requests that come through over the last session. So now we are working hard through all of our departments based on those 67 bills to figure out sort of what we need to do, what you all need to do, because that actually means more work for you as well. And you're going to hear a little bit about that from Ms. Mello and Ms. Bloom tomorrow, I believe. So just wanted to give an update on the Education Leadership Council, that the subcommittee work is, but basically the summer is the time spent for the subcommittees to be meeting. And so some of those meetings have already occurred. We have a couple coming up, and we'll resend these meeting times. They're up on the website too, but we have a student transitions subcommittee meeting on Monday, June 18th. And that looks like there's an acronym there that I'm not actually sure, but it might be the Community College System Administration Building at East Lowry. Then in July, we have subcommittees meeting on responsive systems and agile learners, and also student transitions again on July 16th and July 18th. So we will make sure you get, those locations are to be announced, and we'll make sure you get those in case you're interested in going to the subcommittees. we're now embarking, now that the school year is over, on sort of the season of conferences and professional development, and I know many of you are going to some of those. I've been invited to present at a number of national forums just on the work that Colorado's doing, and also actually a lot of the work that you all have led. So I'll be able to talk a little bit about some of the computer science work that you all have supported, as well as your good work on the accountability legislation, the READ Act legislation, and your support of things like, apprenticeships work, work-based learning, internships, those sorts of things. So I'll be sharing some of that at some of our state conferences, as well as the national conferences across the country. And so with that, we have, I noticed from the board director's report that you all had a lot of work to do for this meeting as well. So somehow that hasn't, doesn't seem that summer has slowed down. But with that, my report is complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, colleagues of the commissioner? Board Member Durham.
Thank you. Just a question as to timing relative to the appropriation for the implementation of the computer science grant that we received in this coming fiscal year's budget. I know we have some rulemaking today on that topic, but it didn't appear to relate to our new appropriation. Is that correct? And
I'll have to, or do you know, Melissa? Maybe Ms. Bloom can answer that. She's our legislative expert.
perfect.
Sorry. The new appropriation won't be in effect till the following
Right.
fiscal year, so this is just for this current grant cycle. So the additional funding that was provided in the long bill will come through the next funding cycle, since it's for the following fiscal year.
And that funding cycle.
But there was $500,000, right?
Yeah.
The additional, yes, an additional.
And that funding cycle begins July 1st, correct?
Correct. That's
And
when the money becomes available.
Available,
to
but we
CDE.
don't have, I guess the question I have, is it possible in some ways to accelerate the implementation of that program so that we're not starting to expend the money in next May or April, in that time frame? That because if we're going to try and have some measure of success, we need to at least have something we can prove in the next few months, I would think. How long is that going to take? Does anyone know that to put those rules in place in emergency rulemaking or something?
So I think overall, that's something that we'll have to speak to the program staff on in terms of what their timeline is for issuing the new RFP and applications to go out the door. The emergency rulemaking was tied to the previous
Right.
funding in terms of getting that out the door, and the rulemaking itself isn't attached to the new appropriation. The changes to the rules aren't associated with the new
Correct, I
appropriation
knew
and the new money.
that.
Yeah.
So will we need new rules or additional rules for that new appropriation?
We should not, no.
Should not. So if we get an RFP in place, then we could begin to implement that program perhaps in September, October, November, in that time frame?
So I don't want to speak on behalf of the program staff, as they've sort of set the timeline for that. So I think they would be more appropriate staff to answer the question, but we'll get back to you on that for
Right,
sure.
and
Thank
I'm
you,
getting,
and-
I'm getting some information.
Oh, okay,
So our program team will address that tomorrow. However, they do say that the rules will enable us to expend the funds for next. So we should be able to expedite it with these sets of rules and do it as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. If you'd kind of
Mhm.
keep us informed of
Yeah.
progress there. And then secondly, this is a request, and it's not meant to be an intrusive request, but if you occasionally attend events in schools or in our districts or in a member's district that, or by and large, public awards ceremonies, that kind of thing. If you plan to attend those, if you could let us know if our attendance is appropriate, I think I, for one, will make an extra effort to try and attend those events and provide some support. So if that's, if you kind of put that on the to-do when appropriate to make sure we know and have an opportunity to attend those events.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Durham. That's actually a really good point, so
Yeah.
I should be doing that as a matter of course.
Thank you, that's helpful. Any other questions? Yes. Board Member Goff?
This is so far away. Can you, either one of you, give a brief expounded answer to what the Subcommittee on Agile Learners actually means? What's the focus of that group?
Sure, Board Member Goff. So I actually haven't attended the first subcommittee of that, so I'll be speaking a little bit from my previous knowledge on it. But I believe what that is around is that how do we ensure that our education system is sort of preparing our learners for systems that are changing so quickly and economies that are changing so quickly and sort of job markets that are changing so quickly, and looking at some of the trends around, that we often have career changers, every 5 years or so now. So you constantly have to be upskilling and really being a lifelong learner to be successful in the workforce. And how can our education systems support that sort of agile mindset that we're constantly learning, and we don't just stop learning once we get a job or a career. We continue to learn. Thank you.
Any other questions? The next item is board member reports. Who would like to begin? Board Member Flores.
Thank you. I was very glad that I attended the.
Board Member Flores, will you grab it?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I was very glad to attend the Emily Griffith breakfast, where there were a number of people who came who were experts in the area of apprenticeships and internships. And aside from being a fun breakfast, it woke me up with the marimbas and all that playing. It was a great experience to see people in business who are working in the field to really advance, as you call agile, to get people more agile in this area and in training. Also, I attended the Denver board meeting, especially the part with the trauma that students and teachers are experiencing. And the board brought in some experts to kind of know what to do with apparently a lot of traumatized kids and teachers over guns, over DACA, over just a number of areas that, kids are experiencing, and homelessness. I also met with Van Scholz of A+, who has done a lot of reports and research on the Denver Public Schools. Of course, he's done reports on other areas, on other schools, but specifically I asked about reports and research on Denver Public Schools. It was a very successful meeting. I am hoping to attend the CASE conference later this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Somebody jump real fast, or? Thank you. Board Member Rankin?
Last week, I gave a presentation to the Garfield County Commissioners meeting, an update on the standards and teacher and school funding. Later this month, I'll attend the National Forum of Educational Policy in Washington, D.C. And this Saturday is Strawberry Days in Garfield County, and there's a big parade, and it's one of the biggest events in Garfield County, and so I expect you all to be there You're all
Okay.
invited.
Oh, great.
Thank you. All right, I'll call on you guys. Board Member McClellan.
Okay, I am very much looking forward to attending and participating in the CASE conference in July, as well as being a featured speaker for the Colorado Special Education Committee at their July meeting as well. And over the course of the last month, I had the pleasure of speaking with stakeholders in all 3 of the counties in Congressional District 6, Adams County, Arapahoe County, and Douglas County. So it was a brief report, but there you have it.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Schaffel, please.
Yeah, June's been a great month, mostly finishing up the academic year, and I look forward to July and all the events that are planned. Thank you.
Board Member Goff.
Thank you. Along with a varied assortment of all of you, attended some of the major bill signings from the state board's view, and that's always it's good. It's good to be there. It's an appreciation for the work that is involved on all parts. So I was happy to be a board member representing the hard work of our staff and the cooperation from the legislators that got our bills through. I also have spent a little bit of time with CASB at some of their regional legislative wrap-up sessions, primarily this past spring. So that was, it's always good to hear other organizations' viewpoints and perspectives on the end of legislative sessions. Looking forward as well to attending the Education Commission of the States Conference at the end of this month, the CASE Conference at the end of July, and a couple of other community meetings that are being held throughout the summer in some districts in my district. So looking forward to more information from the community on their plans, their goals, and their perceptions of how things are going in their school districts. And as far as personal, I celebrated my 36th anniversary yesterday. So did my husband. He celebrated too. So happy to have that day come, and good to be here. Thank you all.
Go. Board Member Rankin.
No, that's okay.
No, come on.
Today is my 48th.
Good goody food. I feel like a youngster.
Board Member Durham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Schroeder and I had the opportunity to attend the Data Quality Conference in Tempe, Arizona last month, late May. I found it to be very helpful, and I thought they really did an outstanding job presenting some of the issues surrounding data privacy, and how best to make use of the information that we already have available to us. And I'm sure perhaps Dr. Schroeder will comment on that as well. I also did get to attend the bill signing of Representative Lundine's bill on transparency of notification of parents regarding the arrest and prosecution of school district employees that have engaged in inappropriate behavior. So was happy to see that bill was signed, and I think hopefully if the districts implement the bill in the spirit in which it was passed, I think it could make a difference, positive difference for those students. So it was a productive month, and thank you.
Sure. So, just give me a shot, and then you can speak again. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
So, yes, I also attended the Data Quality Campaign meeting. I thought it was very interesting. One of the areas that is of deep interest to me anyway is about having the right teachers in the right classrooms, and how do we monitor that with appropriate data. So I did get some ideas of some things that are going on in other states. That's what's sometimes most helpful about the conferences, is that we learn what other folks are trying and how is it working, et cetera. So there are some things in my notebook that I would like to actually bother staff with more questions, is the reality of that one. I also have attended 2 of the Education Leadership Council subcommittee meetings. I serve on the Teacher and Leader Subcommittee, and we are working, such as the other subcommittees, we are all working on what do we think are the needs for the state of Colorado. This is about what are the needs for teaching and leadership, and then trying to not water that down, but bring that down to some very succinct terminology and explanations in order to have some effective communication with members of our state about what our vision is for Colorado. They've been very interesting. I don't know when the next meeting has not been scheduled. They are being held all over the state. I've been lost both times. So I need to get better maps. I also attended the recent National Association of State Boards of Education board meeting. I serve on that board. We're going to have a leadership change there, so I think that will be something that is going to add potentially some work. I also attended another program about leadership in educational equity, and I am learning a lot about what that means, what the terminology means or doesn't mean to folks, and I'll be continuing that over the summer. I will also be attending the Education Commission of the States Conference and the Colorado Association of School Executives Conference in this next month. And there will not be a board meeting next month. Thank you. Board Member Flores, you wanted the floor again.
Oh, yes. Just in addition to a meeting we attended at a signing of a bill with the governor, who, by the way, called us a rock. I thought he called us rock stars, meaning the board, but I was mistaken. Somebody corrected me, and he had called us the rocks, strong rocks.
That was fine.
Okay.
Go ahead, Board Member Flores.
I think so.
Board Member McClellan.
This is why I wasn't volunteering myself faster. My hubby was taking a quick picture of the calendar page, so thanks for your patience. I neglected to thank staff for helping to answer questions for leadership from the Sikh community, and we met in May here in the boardroom just to make sure that they had a chance to have all their questions answered about how to move forward now that they're included in the Colorado Academic Standards in the social studies section. So thank you again to everyone who was a part of doing that work, the committee members, the staff, and for everyone who voted in favor of those new standards, which now include, of course, Taoism as well as Sikhism in world religions. So thanks again for that.
Thank you. Board Member Flores.
Thank you. Today, I am pleased to announce that our Colorado State Board of Education nominated Jane Goff for the 2018 NASB Distinguished Service Award. Jane has demonstrated support and leadership for the children of Colorado for many years at the national, state level, and local, and in her current role as a member of the Colorado State Board of Education. She's also our board legislative liaison, as is Steve, and as a former teacher and leader in Jefferson County Public Schools. Jane has served as an appointment member or liaison on numerous national, state, and local committees and councils, and has influenced the education policies through her leadership on the Colorado State Board of Education. Now, there are numerous titles that Jane has received over, many years. She's very, she doesn't talk about this, but Jane is involved nationally and internationally in the world of education. Jane has also been very involved with NASB since 2010, and during this time has served as president of the National Association of School Boards of Education in our country. Presently, she continues to share her deep knowledge in education with other state boards of education across the United States. For me personally, Jane was an excellent mentor when I first entered the race to become a candidate running for the State Board of Education representing Congressional District 1, and then when I became a state board member. She has continually provided the guidance and support needed for proper boardmanship. On a personal note, after the death of my mom, Jane was there and took the time to listen during, my many hours of, crying and telling her how sad I was. And I thank you, Jane. There were other members of the board who did this, and I thank you all. But Jane was exceptional in listening. She's a human being, a real human being. Let me repeat. We thank Jane for her service and dedication to improving education both in the local classroom, at the state level and national level, and thus we show our gratitude for Jane's commitment through this nomination for the National Association of School Boards of Education's Distinguished Service Award. Thank you, Jane Goff. Thank you.
I really am speechless. I don't think I talk a lot anyway, so this is a real stream. I'm very grateful. I am totally honored. And,
Well deserved.
Thank you. I've said a lot of times in various places and under different contexts, this is the best job in the world. I have found this to be the perfect way for me to bring back. We all talk about how do we give back and contribute and fulfill with gratitude what we've had the opportunity to learn about, and so all of the years have come to what I believe is the perfect fruition in this work on the board. And thank you very much, everybody. I'm honored beyond words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
very
Jane.
much.
Are we ready to move on? Any more comments? Okay, thank you. Our next item is accountability recommendations concerning Manaw Elementary School, case number 18-AR-02. State Board will now consider and adopt a written final determination for the accountability recommendation concerning Manaw Elementary School, case number 18-AR-02. Public testimony will not be heard at this time. However, department, staff, and legal counsel are available to answer any final questions that we may have before I ask for a motion. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will turn this over to Brenda Bausch. I'm not sure if our team, okay, yes, I will turn this over to Brenda Bausch.
Hello, good morning. We are here to present the final written determination. This was done in conjunction with the school district, and it lays out what we decided at the last board meeting, which was an external management partnership with the University of Virginia and the Relay School of Graduate School of Education. If you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Colleagues, any questions? In that case, I'll entertain a motion, please. Board Member Rankin?
I move to approve the final written determination as proposed by the district to direct Manaw Elementary School to implement its pathway proposal for external management as filed with the state board on May 9th, 2018.
Second. Thank you, that's proper motion. We've lost a board member. Yeah.
Oh, he's there.
Here he is, okay. We're ready to vote unless you have a concern.
On
Board
Manaw.
Member Durham, on Manaw.
No, Emma.
Go ahead. Could you please call the roll?
Board Member Durham,
Yes.
Board Member Flores,
Yes.
Board Member Goff,
Yes.
Board Member McClellan,
Yes.
Board Member Rankin,
Yes.
Board Member Sheppel,
Yes.
and Board Member Schroeder.
Yes. Our thanks to staff for all the work that you've done for this. Our next item is public comment. Would you be kind enough to bring in the sheet? So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a large number of folks who have signed up, more than I believe we'll have time for. So if you find that someone else has already said the words that you plan to present, it would be helpful if you would acknowledge that as opposed to taking the full 3 minutes. It's up to you, but at some point, by 10:30, we will need to cut it off, and we'll be glad to hear you again later this afternoon, which is the second time that we have public comment. But our plan is to end public, we're starting a little bit early, but is to end public participation at 10:30. So I want to remind you that we will not engage in conversations with you. We look forward to hearing from you, but this is not an interactive activity. This is just an opportunity for you to speak to us. And we don't have any quasi-judicial things coming up, so that's not an issue. So let me call the first person. Remember, you have 3 minutes or less to speak. Please. Anna Siegor, please come and speak.
Hello. I begin by stating my opposition to the proposed 4th grade health curriculum changes requiring students to discuss the benefit of gun ownership. Research on 626 shootings has shown that guns are 4 to 11 times more likely to be used for suicides, homicides, or accidental shootings than for home defense. Please put student safety first and get the NRA agenda out of Colorado schools. Secondly, I'm a parent of Boulder Valley School District elementary school students, and I first became concerned last year when my 3rd grade son informed me about the violent video games he was playing online in school. The principal and the chief information officer of BVSD both say that the solution was for him to improve his digital citizenship. I have met many other parents and teachers who have similar experiences of bringing technology concerns to the district for over a year, only to have them ignored, deflected, or denied. We believe BVSD is in violation of 2 federal laws: SEPA, a law requiring districts to block internet access to obscene or harmful images, and COPA, a law requiring parental consent prior to data collection from minors. In BVSD, students can readily access profanity, violence, racial slurs, nudity, and other indecent content online. I have handed out packets to everybody with screenshots from elementary schools so you can see some of the examples of what I'm talking about. Furthermore, there are no Spanish language filters in a district that has a significant Spanish-speaking population and several bilingual schools. In response to our concerns, the district says that what one may consider offensive, another may consider educational. YouTube specifically states in its terms of service that it is not for users under 13 years of age, and users between 13 and 18 must have parental consent prior to using the platform, because it collects data on users. YouTube is accessible in BVSD elementary school classrooms, and its use is promoted by the district without informed parental consent. At school, students are also exposed to online advertising. You can see screenshots of advertising for Star Wars. My son has reported seeing ads for Pokemon and gaming sites at school. Parents are also concerned about unregulated access to online gaming, chat, and social media sites on BVSD computers and network at school that allow students to communicate with people off campus without any parental knowledge, consent, or supervision. Social media and gaming serve no educational purpose, and there is no social media platform that allows users under 13 years of age. Yet BVSD provides access for 11 and 12-year-old middle school students. There are no limits on screen time. There are no requirements that the district conduct evaluations to show how technology has impacted education. There are no alternatives for parents who want to opt out of technology use at school. There's no transparent process for parents and teachers to file complaints about technology. There's no parental consent on the data that's collected and shared online from students, such as the Google asking for the location. Do I have to stop?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jen Kroll. Sorry. It's just Jen Kroll. Tim Krug.
Good morning, board members. Madam Chair, thank you so much for allowing me a chance to speak today. I would also like to speak about the proposed amendment to the fourth grade standards. My name is Tim Krug, and as many of you know, I am a candidate for the State Board of Education in Congressional District 4, where I most certainly live with my wife and 2 children. But I'm not here in a campaign capacity today. I am here as a parent of 2 elementary-aged children, and as someone who has experience discussing how to safely handle firearms with children. I am not only a Cub Master with my children's Cub Scout pack, but I'm a Boy Scouts of America certified range master, which means I've completed a certification course in order to supervise shooting ranges, to teach children shooting sports such as wrist rockets, archery, and firearms, but most importantly, to teach these children about safety. The instructor for my course was a certified instructor from the National Rifle Association, and in fact, the Boy Scouts of America's program is very much based on the National Rifles Association's junior gun safety program known as Eddie the Eagle. Eddie the Eagle was specifically designed for kindergartners through 4th graders, which I think is very poignant since we are considering a 4th grade standard here. What our 2 organizations are teaching children is about the potential danger of encountering an unsupervised firearm. And what we teach them is to stop, don't touch, run away, and find an adult. And that is where the lesson stops. We do not get involved in a larger subjective conversation about the use or ownership of guns because that is a privilege reserved for parents. I very much believe that it is up to my wife and I to decide when our children are mature enough to have a discussion about the positive or negative aspects of gun use or ownership in our home. And I find it inappropriate for the state government to decide when and under what context our family will have that discussion. I would respectfully ask for Board Member Rankin to withdraw this amendment, but failing that, I would ask the rest of you to please vote no and demonstrate that parents, not the state government, should decide when it is appropriate to discuss the uses, positive or negative, of guns in their own homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jen Kroll, is she here now? Sherry Kiesinger?
Good morning. My name is Sherry Kiesecker. I'm a parent of 2 children in Poudre School District, and I'm talking about technology in our schools this morning. A lot of parents are concerned about screen time, and I know there are screen time limits by the American Academy of Pediatricians, but it does not go into educational screen time. It doesn't designate how much screen time kids can have in schools. There's a growing concern about social media, gaming, online chats being allowed in the classroom. And these are being used as educational activities, yet that's not regulated. The American Psychiatric Association recently included internet gaming disorder as a potential diagnosis in the DSM-5. The criteria they list as symptoms that are likely to say you have this disorder are something that most parents can recognize. They range from, well, I don't know if I can pull it up. Withdrawal symptoms or tantrums when you can't access the games. Preoccupation with the games, thinking about your next game, dreaming about the games. Unsuccessful attempts at trying to limit or reduce the games. Continued excessive use of games despite knowledge of your boundaries or rules against. And we know we have lots of children in the classroom, teachers saying that kids are sneaking onto their devices to play Fortnite and other games that are not allowed in the classroom because they can use hotspots on their phones or the internet filters aren't working. There are several links to suicide and depression for teens who use social media. There's also increase in myopia, loss of sleep, anxiety, ADHD. And the problem with the screen time is it's cumulative and there are no age-appropriate guidelines. So when a child spends half an hour in each classroom, that builds up, and then they go home and they do homework, and then they use the screen time for their own personal interests. We don't know what that's doing to a child's brain, and we don't know what data is being collected on that child. We don't know how they're being profiled. There are thousands of apps that were found to be inappropriately collecting data on students, and several privacy groups just filed an FTC complaint about that. Common Sense Media just filed an FTC complaint against Facebook for its data sharing practices of teenagers. And I'm just hoping that this board will take that seriously and look into screen time in schools as well as outside of school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kieseker. Angela Tapp.
Hello, my name's Angela Tapp. I'm a data analyst and a counselor. I've worked closely with Fortune 500 companies, and I've worked at one of the most highly ranked security companies in the nation. But more importantly, I'm the parent of 2 students in Jefferson County. My children are not allowed to have a smartphone, and it is a non-issue until now. We are entering middle school, and I have been led to believe my children will not exceed socially or academically without a smartphone. I'm here today because I'm compelled to share with you what I've learned. Most school districts leave smartphone policy up to school principals, who then report they leave it up to teachers who may or may not have a policy. Some parents have stated they need to communicate with their students during the school day. As it relates to behavior, some teachers are teaching students to take pictures of notes on the board or to Google something. Many parents have reported students are commonly receiving texts of exams. Teachers are telling students to use their phones as planners and for classroom communications. Students are confessing to hot spots at school during the day, during study hall or lunch, to bypass Wi-Fi restrictions. A middle school principal told me student smartphones are a part of school security. There seems to be no evidence that the research or the mental health expertise is being used in the conversation. This past weekend, I created a Put It Away for the School Day petition in my county. I'm asking them to implement consistent policy in our middle schools. I'm asking them to demonstrate leadership and acknowledge the research that is demonstrating the risk and the harm to our young people. Along with the families, this petition has already received endorsements from neuropsychologists, authors, and professionals in our educated community. Alarming mental health research in this area is pouring in. And I will be sending you a copy of the petition, which contains current year statistics. Here are some of the questions I have for you. Are public schools tasked with teaching the responsible use of mobile phones? Is it part of core standards? Is it part of the curriculum, and is there time? Do district IT departments also have curriculum development training or continuing education in the area of mental health and technology? Have Colorado teachers been offered research in the efficacy of integrating smartphones into their learning? Are smartphones part of the school supply list? Students have been raised on technology that offers constant stimulation, strategic reward, and instant gratification. They are craving distraction in an environment that requires focus, critical thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan Schaller.
Good morning, State Board of Education members. My name is Dan Schaller. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs with the Colorado League of Charter Schools. We're the statewide nonprofit organization that represents the vast majority of chartered public schools across Colorado. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the League to express our concerns with the application of Career Academies of America, CAA, to obtain certification as a multi-district online charter school under Huerfano RE1 School District, which you will be considering later today. The League takes very seriously the notion that one of the primary reasons charter schools have been granted the autonomies they have is because of the expectation that these autonomies will translate into better results for kids. Indeed, at the heart of our mission statement is the objective to improve student achievement, positively reshape the public school landscape, and expand high-quality public school choice. It is because of this core focus on quality that I'm here today to voice our concerns with CAA's certification request. Based on the application materials we've seen, along with major reservations we have about both the capacity of the authorizer and the track record of the education service provider the school proposes to work with, we feel there are enough red flags to seriously question whether the school would wind up representing a high-quality alternative for most of its students. The education service provider in question, Summit Education Group, has had well-publicized failed experiences with 2 online operators in the past, Goal Academy and the Rocky Mountain Digital Academy. In both cases, the schools ended up having to sever their relationship with Summit as a result of mismanagement and low academic performance. CAA now wants to enter a relationship with them whereby all but 1% of allowable per-pupil revenue would flow directly to Summit. Additionally, our review of the draft contract CAA would hold with Summit reveals little to no performance indicators by which Summit would be clearly and consistently held accountable for results. This does not feel like a recipe for success, given other schools' experiences with this particular education service provider in the past. What also concerns us is the recent track record of the school district, Huerfano RE1, that seeks to serve as the authorizer in this arrangement. Multi-district online schools are complex entities to oversee, requiring a strong degree of commitment and expertise to ensure performance is on track across a diverse student body that could easily be scattered across all corners of the state. It has not been our experience that small districts with no prior authorizing experience, particularly those with a very uneven track record of performance, such as that which Huerfano has had in recent years, are in the best position to take on this complex task. We would much rather see the district focus its limited time and resources on ensuring its existing brick and mortar schools, all 3 of which are either currently on the clock or just recently came off of it, are on the path towards sustained success rather than risking getting distracted by a multi-district online school. For all these reasons, we strongly encourage you to examine the CAA certification request very closely. As of right now, there aren't many proof points for highly successful virtual schools, charter or otherwise, either here in Colorado or across the country, which is all the more reason for the board to consider this application very carefully and make sure the conditions for success are right before deciding to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Monge?
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Sarah Monge, and I'm a public policy officer at the Colorado Health Foundation. The Colorado Health Foundation works to bring health within reach of all Coloradans by engaging closely with communities across the state through investing, policy, advocacy, learning, and capacity building. Our work is centered upon 3 key cornerstones: serving low-income Coloradans or those who have historically less power and privilege, creating health equity, and always wanting to be informed by the community and those we exist to serve. The Colorado Health Foundation would like to thank the board for all the time and effort you have put into updating the comprehensive health standards and applaud the time-consuming work of incorporating feedback into what you're considering today. We appreciate that health is part of the core content standards and recognize that if Colorado students do not have the physical and mental health supports they need, learning might be an even greater challenge. In particular, we'd like to thank you for the strengthening of the social and emotional supports, as we know that providing students with resources and skills to handle the day-to-day stresses they are presented with is vitally important now more than ever. We also appreciate the inclusion of marijuana and prescription drugs into the language of the health standards, as we recognize that with the legalization of marijuana, it's more important to help educate students on the health impacts of the drugs and enable schools to support their students in a comprehensive manner and help prevent substance use and abuse. So again, on behalf of the Colorado Health Foundation, we just want to thank you today for your good work and your efforts to help Colorado students be healthy and active. My contact information is on our website, and we're always happy to have follow-up conversations as you continue this good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Barnes?
Good morning. I have a petition here, and I wasn't sure who I was supposed
Please
to
speak
deliver
into the microphone.
Sorry, I have a petition here, and I wasn't sure who to deliver it to. That is from Move On, addressing this issue. I'm Rachel Barnes. Good morning to everybody.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm a teacher in Denver Public Schools and a parent to a 6th and a 3rd grader. I'm here to discuss Standard 4, which is meant to help 4th graders learn to demonstrate skills to prevent a conflict from escalating to violence. One of the proposed inquiry questions is, how can the use of guns and other weapons be positive? This has absolutely no business being in a lesson on conflict management. As soon as a weapon is brought into a conflict, it then becomes a violent situation. Someone's either going to be injured or leave the situation terrified for their lives, possibly going to go get a bigger weapon and back up. The conflict will not be resolved, and the problem will continue in one way or another and continue to escalate. This is supposed to be a unit about conflict resolution, avoiding violence. Adding weapons to this is like having a unit about fire safety and then asking, what are the benefits to playing with matches in the middle of a drought-stricken forest? This proposed inquiry question number 4 should be removed from the standard. I would also like to address the proposed addition of benefits of self-defense to the evidence outcomes, letter D. So it would read, explain the potential dangers of having weapons at home, in school, and in the community, and the benefits for self-defense. I think that's been addressed already. So I do think that that is for parents to handle and not for us to be discussing in schools. And I could go on about how having easy access to guns doubles the risk of death from gun-related homicides and triples the risk of suicide. But I will stop in the sake of time. I hope that you will remove the amendment and also the inquiry question number 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Carlson Roberts, but I'm not sure I did that correctly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did, and I'm sorry for that long name, but thank you so much for all your work and your service to our state. My name is Diane Carlson Robinson, and my husband, Doug Robinson. We are co-founders of Smart Colorado, which formed after the health and safety of kids ranked as last priority during the initial marijuana policymaking process. Since then, support has grown very rapidly as thousands of our members and parents are deeply concerned on these issues, and as efforts to collaborate with Colorado PTA and over 400 other youth-serving organizations continue to happen, as more and more people are concerned about our kids being exposed to marijuana and non-prescription drugs and other illegal drugs. And you know this better than anyone, but with superintendents from all of our schools all over the state saying that marijuana has unfortunately become one of our top issues. And the forms and the types of products and potencies that are out there are making it even more confusing. Meanwhile, perception of harms are declining. This issue is more important than ever. And so we just really want to applaud the leadership from all of you and want to support the language that says throughout the comprehensive health standards, whereas the phrase, in quote, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs is used, that be modified to read marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. And again, we just really want to thank you for recognizing the challenges for us parents. I mean, I'm a parent of 5 kids, and recognizing the need to specifically lay that out, and for all the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Siegel.
Hi, I'm Melissa. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I taught 4th to 5th grade in DPS for 2 years. I taught 4th to 5th grade in Mapleton Public Schools for 4 years. I taught at a DSST inner-city charter school for 1 year. The students who attend Title I 90% or greater free and reduced lunch schools do not need a state standard suggesting that any learning time be spent on gun ownership. There is zero best practice education research that exists in support of discussing gun ownership as part of conflict resolution. Let's call this proposed standard language what it is: propaganda. Students need better mental health services precisely because of increased gun violence in their communities. Proposing to include language regarding gun ownership could not display a more willful blind eye to the current events of school gun violence that have perpetuated in communities since Columbine. Students need teachers who stay in the classroom versus teachers who are driven to leave the profession by exactly this type of extremely misguided policy. Young students don't need to spend one precious moment of learning time on discussing gun ownership. They need better social emotional curriculum and more social workers. Students need exactly the opposite of a state learning standard that suggests discussion on gun ownership like the one that is being proposed. You should be ashamed of this preposterous language that has been included. Stop these callous attempts at shoving NRA propaganda down the throats of children who are already traumatized by lockdown drills and actual shootings. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda Williams?
Good morning. Thank you for hearing my conversation. I'm Dr. Rhonda Williams from the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. I come to you as an experienced LPC, licensed professional counselor, and a school counselor. At university professor, the former ethics chair for the American School Counselor Association, and the former executive director of the Colorado School Counselor Association. As a professor of clinical and school counselors, I'm not here to oppose allowing licensed professional counselors to become licensed school counselors. However, I am concerned about that clinicians would enter the role and have little or no training about the ethical or curricular considerations of the role. Let me give you an example of an LPC who served as an emergency licensed school counselor. There were no inductions specific to school counseling for this individual from a rural community. Consequently, the person was doing one-on-one counseling, which is how they were trained. This method of counseling allowed her to see only about 10% of the students of a caseload of 350. Thus, she did not meet any of the expectations of the state ICAP. She had no time to do post-secondary workforce readiness or college information. There was no small group counseling or social emotional issues prevention, classroom guidance, or any other issues that were addressed, leaving about 85 to 90% of the students unattended. Most importantly, the LPC did not understand the ethical issues as a trained school counselor that are very different than those of an LPC. Certainly, there are similarities, do no harm. But on the other hand, she did not realize that school counselors in this state do not have privilege, meaning that although confidentiality is an issue and school counselors try to keep conversations that they have with students confidential, that they do not have privilege if it were taken to court. If a lawyer or a judge asks for a school counselor to disclose that information, they must do so based on the ethical standards and the mandates of this state. Unfortunately, she did not understand that she was serving as a school counselor, not an LPC. Consequently, her actions could be liable to the school district. And that she did not understand that she must abide and be held accountable in any court case, that what might happen would be based on the ethical school counselors, the ethical standards of a school counselor, not the ethical standards of an LPC. She did not understand that as a school counselor, she must work with the whole family, not just the individual student. As stated in the preamble of our ethical standards, we balance competing issues so that we can work to the best interests of the students. It states very clearly that we must understand parental and guardian inherent rights being guiding voices of their children's lives, which will always be our ethical decision making, in the forefront of our ethical decision making. And now I'm going to shut up. Thank you.
But thank you for coming to speak. Haven Coleman? Bless you. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and begin. And introduce yourselves, please.
This is my 4th grade sister, just to say. Hi, I'm Haven Coleman. I'm 12 and a Denver Public School student, a member of the Never Again Colorado Board of and an environmental advocate. I spoke at Teen Vogue Summit last week on being a voice for change. Al Gore says that Emma Gonzalez and I are the up-and-coming leaders to watch out for. Anyway, people exaggerate the benefits of having a gun and underestimate the consequences for having one. I don't want to hear how guns are safe in people's houses when kids are bringing those guns in our schools and killing us. Families are not safer when guns are in the house. In 2016, there were 38,658 firearm deaths in the U.S. 59% of these deaths were suicides. 55,000 Americans over the age of 10 died by suicide in 2016 alone. That's more than double of the number of Americans who died by homicide in the same year. Suicide has been steadily increasing in the U.S. for the past 2 decades. It's even higher in the Rocky Mountain regions and Midwest, where more people own guns. We just moved from the far east side of Colorado Springs, where a lot of people own guns, and this past year, I knew of several suicides in my neighborhood and a parent from school. Guns do not make homes or conflicts safer or relationships better. Why are we teaching kids that guns can solve conflicts when kids are using guns to kill someone just because they didn't want to be their girlfriend? Please rethink adding the curriculum how the use of gun and other weapons can be positive in conflict situations, especially to 4th graders. Teach that boys can love beautiful feminine things too. Teach us that a whole range of feelings are okay from all people. Boys can feel more feelings than just anger. Male violence starts young, and it starts with shaming them for feeling anything but anger and teaching them that to take what theirs or they're not a man. Please think this through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So folks, in an effort to begin a little bit early, I believe some of you came in hoping to speak, but the sign-up sheet had been brought in. If there are any of you who came in later intending to sign up but were unable to outside, we still have 10 minutes left. Please come forward. And my apologies, I couldn't figure out how to do both. No, you don't need to sign up. Please introduce yourself and I will write it down on these. I have the sign-up sheet.
My name is Deron Turner, and I have one child that just completed his first year of college, and so that means at one time I had 4 children in the DPS school system. My issues around putting a piece in the curriculum of children understanding the benefits of having guns, it seems really silly to me, because as we know, with the school system as a whole and the broken pieces of the school system, most people of color are still fighting for diverse educational curriculum and diverse teaching staffs in the schools as a whole. So I think it's really silly to think about putting guns in a classroom for a teacher that's already stressed out in the first place, but also putting it within a curriculum. It doesn't make any sense to me, because it's like, what are we teaching children? If we can't teach children about their own personal history, i.e. Black history, Latina history, and indigenous people's history, why would we want to put in a curriculum something about guns and the benefits of it? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And as a parent, I find it offensive that you all would not think about the whole of the school system and want to put something like that in a curriculum and pressure teachers or educators to try and teach children about the benefits of guns. My youngest child has special needs, and it scares me to death to think that anybody that she spends time with or around would think that it's okay to have guns within the area that she's in, or even the children that she's around. And so I think you all should think very carefully before you put certain statutes statutes and pieces of legislation into place that could be very detrimental to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Please introduce yourself because I did not give you a chance to sign up.
I'm Eileen McCarron, and I'd like to speak about the adding the benefits of guns to the curriculum for fourth graders. The idea of adding it to a conflict resolution program just is preposterous. Guns elevate situations when there is conflict. And if we want to talk about benefits of guns in the home, some people believe it makes their family safer as they can protect themselves from an intruder. In actuality, because of easy accessibility of a gun to children, adolescents, and other family members, the gun's presence increases the risk of gun violence. Guns kept in the home for self-protection are 22 times more likely to kill a family member or friend, than to ever be used to kill in self-defense. The risk of homicide in a home where there are guns is 3 times higher. The risk of suicide is 5 times higher in a household with guns. And with domestic violence, we know that a woman who is being abused is 5 times more likely to die if her abuser has a firearm. A gun in the home, I have here that it increases the risk of unintentional shootings. It seems like it's hard to say increases when you have something that's an infinite thing, because if there's not a gun in the home, you can't have an unintentional shooting in the home. And particularly this affects children. Unintentional shootings happen often when children find an unsecured adult's loaded handgun in a drawer or closet, and while playing with it, shoot themselves, a sibling, or a friend. The rate of unintentional shootings for children 0 to 14 is 9 times higher in our country than in 25 other developed countries combined. I suggest this is a proposal that is preposterous. Please don't consider it.
Thank you.
Tay Anderson, T-A-Y-A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N. Board members and people in the audience, I really want you to consider and voting no on the inquiry question number 4 that pulls in the benefits of guns in classrooms. As an African American man, I've been in several schools where African American children are watching TV every day when people that look just like me are being gunned down, and they do not need to be taught about what are the positive aspects of having a gun in your household or having a gun in general. They should be taught math, science, social studies, the arts. That's what we should be focusing our time on, because right now, especially in this country and the time that we live in, we see too far that African Americans are being targeted by gun violence in their communities every single day. And for a Board of Education to try to propose this inquiry question, it might not be a requirement, but it is still something that teachers can say or use. This is preposterous. We need to be able to stand up and making sure that we say we're not putting your people over your party affiliation, because it's time that we put our people first. And as an African American man, it frustrates me that we have so many small children in 4th grade. It surprises me that it's not hitting a high school level, but it's hitting 4th grade. And I've worked with 1st graders who are terrified every time they hear the lockdown drill go down. They don't know if they're going to make it out. They hide behind chairs, they hide behind doors, they hide behind windows. They try to hide behind anything they can to make sure that nothing hits them. And those are 1st graders that are terrified because they have seen on TV what the negative aspects of guns do to their communities. And so I'm asking you today, whoever, to the sponsor of this amendment or to this inquiry question, remove it. Stand up on the right side of history. Be a person who can stand up and say, I'm not going to introduce this because it shouldn't be taught at a 4th grade level. Fight for the arts. Fight for drama. Fight for lunch for all of our kids before you fight for guns in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be our last speaker. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak?
Good morning.
My name is Alicia Haywood, and I work at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. On behalf of CDPHE, I would like to thank you for your work on behalf of the Comprehensive Health Standards. Within these standards, we believe it's important to explicitly call out unique substances such as marijuana and prescription drugs, as they each have their own unique considerations and circumstances. Therefore, throughout the Comprehensive Health Standards, whenever the phrase alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs is used, we propose it be modified to read marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to speak. We appreciate it. We're going to take a short break before we can move on to the standards. Thank you. The State Board will now consider and adopt the comprehensive health and physical education, science, and reading and writing and communicating standards. I ask that staff give a brief presentation before I take a motion. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. I will turn this over to Dr. Melissa Colsman and Dr. Floyd Cobb.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. As Dr. Anthus indicated, Dr. Floyd Cobb and I are here to bring forward these final 3 sets of standards for board votes today. We'll be introducing our committee participants in just a couple of moments, but first we'd like to just make sure that you're aware of all of the materials that you have and just remind the board of a few procedural pieces. So first, again, our purpose today is to enable board members to take action on the proposed revisions to these 3 sets of standards. And as the board agreed to process through this revision adoption sequence, that action items such as today would consist of 5 parts. The first part would be to orient the board to the committee and public responses to any proposed amendments. The second portion is to enable the board to ask clarifying questions of the board chair about the committee's response. Because the board chairs would not be able to engage with the committee on further questions beyond what the committee has responded to in writing, we believe it's appropriate to keep those to clarifying questions rather than have the committee chair speak on behalf of the committee on a question that they may not have discussed. The third portion of each item would be to discuss any proposed amendments that there are. That is a board discussion, and the board did agree to a 5-minute time limit for each member on that. That's followed by a vote on any proposed amendments, which is then followed by a vote on the proposed set of standards. So this is the process that we'll be following today, and we'll be beginning with comprehensive health standards. Just a quick note of orientation to your materials. You should have a PowerPoint for today, which will guide our presentation. And for each committee section, you should have, if there were any board amendments, you should have a copy of those amendments. You should have a copy of the committee's responses to those amendments. And then you should have copies of any public feedback that has been received. Now, I believe that Busy has provided you with some additional public comment that has been received since the board agenda was posted a week ago. So you have those, and I believe those are probably up to about 9 o'clock this morning, and Carol has been forwarding to you any additional comments that have been received since that point. So we're trying to keep you as up to date as possible. So we'll go ahead and begin our presentation for comprehensive health and physical education, and I'll hand this off to Dr. Cobb.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest this morning. In the middle, 2 seats over from me is Jamie Grimm-Rice. She's the committee chair in comprehensive health and education. To my immediate right is Terry Jones. He's the committee chair for physical education. And to Dr. Colsman's right is Dr. Jamie Hurley. He is the health and physical education principal consultant here with the department. And as Dr. Colsman mentioned, we'll go through this process in terms of committee get an opportunity to provide responses to the amendments, questions, discussion, and then a vote on the proposed amendments, and then overall action. And so at that point, we will turn it over to Jamie, and she'll be able to provide any information. Madam Chair, do you have any questions? Good.
Good morning. For the First Amendment, the committee response is as followed. The committee does not agree that adding self-defense to the evidence outcome is appropriate for 4th grade. The current inquiry question number 4, how can the use of guns and other weapons be positive, could be used to guide a discussion about self-defense in the event a school community feels that it is appropriate. The amendment number 2, the committee agrees with the proposed amendment to add parent or trusted adult to the standards where the phrasing does not currently exist. Amendment 3, the committee agrees with the proposed amendment. And amendment number 4, currently in the comprehensive health standards, there are 4 instances of the phrase alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. These include 5th grade standard 4, grade level expectation 1, Colorado Essential Skills and Real World Application 5. 8th grade standard 4, grade level expectation 2, inquiry question 1. High school standard 2, expectation 4, Colorado Essential Skills and Real World Application 6. And high school expectation standard 4, Colorado Essential Skills and Real World Application 5. The committee is in agreement with the amendment to modify these instances from alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs to marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. The committee agrees with the importance of education about marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Through Prepare Graduate Statement 6, apply knowledge and skills to make health-enhancing decisions regarding the use of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs. The standards in grade 2 through high school address marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. At the lower grades, topics are age-appropriate and cumulative. Topics introduced in earlier grades, such as tobacco, are addressed again in subsequent grades, while additional age-appropriate topics are added, such as marijuana and other drugs. In the early elementary grades, tobacco and marijuana in the form of edibles are addressed in relationship to products that are safe and unsafe to eat and avoiding secondhand smoke. Also, proper and improper use of medication and household items are included. In the upper elementary grades, alcohol and marijuana are more directly addressed and refusal skills begin to be emphasized. At the middle school, marijuana, other drugs, and substances, also known as common household items that can be dangerous when abused, are emphasized. At the high school, the topics of marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco are fully addressed. It is important to note that the term illegal drugs is not used in the standards because marijuana, alcohol, tobacco are all illegal under the legal age of possession or use. Prescription drugs are illegal if they are abused or used if not prescribed. However, if the intention of the amendment is to change the current phrasing of the Prepare Graduate Statement and all other references to the topics of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs, the committee would not be supportive. Using the phrase marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco in every instance in the standards would disrupt the age-appropriate building of knowledge and skills that has been described in this response. To assist state board members in reviewing the specific references to alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs, the staff has prepared an overview document, and I believe you all have it as well.
All right, Madam Chair, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So I'll entertain some motions. There are 4 amendments that have been proposed by colleagues. Board Member Rankin?
I have a concern, and I do want to support the amendment from page 47, the first amendment that was put forth by a board member at the last meeting. Explain the potential dangers of having weapons at home, in school, and in the community. Now, I looked at this and studied it, and when the amendment and benefits for self-defense came into play, I agreed with benefits because we're addressing the school and the community. And we have safety officers in the school. We have police in the community. So I would reword this to be explain the potential dangers and benefits of having weapons at home, in school, and the community. And it probably is more of an inquiry question. Then when I went and looked at what the committee said in their report, committee does not agree that adding self-defense to the evidence outcome is appropriate. I agree with the committee. So I combined those 2 pieces to what I just read. including the benefits. Now, if I look at a bigger, broader view, and I heard a lot of input today, I don't think weapons and I don't think guns should be addressed as frequently as they are in the elementary school level. I think it should be possibly high school, and we need to include the Second Amendment in the Constitution when we address it. I agree wholeheartedly with the kindergarten. On page 19, it's addressed there. What would you do if you found a gun? And one of the speakers this morning just took what I would have said. You stop, you don't touch, you run away, and you say an adult. In kindergarten, you say a grown-up. So I totally support number 2, including parents and everything, and this is first and foremost where parents should be involved. When we talk about curriculum, that's for the local districts and the schools to be involved in. These are standards. The standards came from the committee, from you. The board has to just address the changes that we can make. I read a lot of things as I've gone over this whole document. There are 27 times weapons are used, I believe. A couple of them, parents were included, and the others, they were not. I'm very happy that you're including the parents in this. This is first and foremost. But I stay with the amendment number 1, and it will read, when I join what the committee said and what was brought up at the last meeting, explain the potential dangers and benefits of having weapons at home, in school, and in the community. If we can't take it all out, that's the way I would change this one, address this one amendment. And that, I guess I have to make a motion toward that, is that?
Right, but your motion does need to be the wording that we've been dealing with, as I understand our process.
Let me see if
I don't think we get to change the wording. What's the wording of what was proposed?
I cannot include the committee's, address what the committee said? I believe I can. I'll make the motion. For page 47, I'll make a motion to combine what the amendment was at the last meeting with what the committee recommendations are, and I'll repeat it. Explain the potential dangers and benefits of having weapons at home, in school, and in the community.
Dr. Colesman?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. The committee's response was to say that they don't agree with the amendment that has been proposed. Instead, what they are pointing out is that there actually is a current inquiry question that seems to get at what the board was asking for. And so that inquiry question is already in the standards. So if the board approves the comprehensive health standards, that inquiry question would remain. So just to clarify.
All right. I'm not going to withdraw it, but I would like it reworded to the way I stated it.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Board Member
On the
Flores.
mic.
Okay, because I want to understand. So you're saying that that question, it's an inquiry question already in the curricula?
That's in the standards, correct.
In essence, we don't need to add an amendment because it's already in there as an inquiry question.
So that would be up to the board to decide whether or not the amendment is needed.
Okay.
Then as it is, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Go.
As it is, I would like to address the fact that throughout the document, the way this is worded, what it does is put fear into students, which I totally disagree with. I thought I heard it today with some of the parents. I've heard it from teachers, the fear. And I believe our document, as it's written, puts fear into the classroom where it's not needed. We need to make children feel safe. And talking about the dangers and all the negative things will only bring more fear into the classroom. That's what I'm very concerned about. So unless we revise, maybe my motion should be revise the whole report, but at this point, I don't think I can address that.
Your motion is, Board Member Rankin.
I'll have to withdraw. I'll have to withdraw the amendment, and I will have to vote against this. This is not appropriate for students in the elementary school.
Would
Oh,
someone-
I'm sorry. Do I have to?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You didn't make a motion, so is there anyone else to make the motion? Board Member Durham?
Madam Chair, not sure I want to make the motion, but I'd like to at least have a moment to discuss this whole concept and the the idea that and I really want to have a long discussion. I will have it about whether or not these standards have been effective over the past since they were originally put in place in 2010, whether they've really been effective at achieving any of the objectives that would appear to be embodied in the standards. And I want to have that discussion before we finish. But this whole concept that we've got a whole bunch of kids living in fear and that they're sufficiently fragile that we just can't have any exposure to any real world. Maybe they should continue to live in the internet and on their electronic devices. But many members of this board are of sufficient age to remember the drills. Apparently drills now scare people, but the drills that we all had, and certainly I had in attending a school that was 1.25 miles from the #1 nuclear target in the entire world, which is the NORAD underground complex. And we went through nuclear attack drills all the time, and I don't remember any of my fellow students quaking in fear from the 5th grade, and we did that all the way through high school. If they were quaking in fear and were sufficiently fragile, they certainly managed to hide it better than they hide those fears today. In fact, I think we've probably raised a society of people that are afraid of virtually everything. So when I get the opportunity to discuss the efficacy of these standards, I will. But I do want to, let's see if I can find my question here. That part of your response to.
And may I say that some of us still have nightmares about, those drills. And this is years later.
Probably weren't just close enough to ground zero.
No, I was 145 miles away.
You're safe. You're safe there. Is it the position of the committee that standards are to be or should embody and evidence-based outcomes? Because you've used that phrase in one of your responses. Is that, should these standards be evidence-based in your judgment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up on that question later. But I do think a number of the commentary, much of the commentary about this whole subject is entirely overblown. I spent the first 10 years of my life in rural Kansas. Every household had a gun, generally loaded, generally in plain sight. No one ever shot anybody, and no one was ever injured accidentally. It's called responsibility. It's called self-responsibility. It's called proper parenting, and I would suggest that in rural Kansas, it was a handy tool to have available, particularly. I think my dad gave me my first shotgun when I was 10 years old, primarily because my brother and I played and fished along a little creek that was infested with water moccasins, so it really was a self-defense item. This chronic fear of the unknown, if you simply know and understand proper use, and parents know and understand proper use and instruct children in proper use, I think many of the evils that have been discussed and overblown are likely not to occur. So with that, I I intend to vote against these entire standards, but I want to make a better case on the evidence-based when we get to the broad discussion of the standards as a whole. Thank you.
So, do we leave this up in the air, or do we vote
If there is someone who wants to make a motion for us to consider this amendment, I believe that Ms. Rankin said she does not want to make that motion. Mr. Durham doesn't, so that motion will not be brought forward, so there's nothing to vote on.
I do have one question then. Did the committee insert on page 47 inquiry item number 4?
Yes.
And that was after the board's original comments?
No.
So this was originally part of the standard, is that as submitted?
This was from public feedback.
So it was from public.
But we did
I think part of the problem we have with this, Madam Chair, and I think it's procedural, and I have no one to blame but myself for not catching it sooner, but somehow we've put the actions of this committee to amend their submissions in a place that is superior to the ability of the board to offer amendments. I think that's procedurally a mistake that we made. This is not the appropriate time to remedy it, but I think going forward when we have things like this, it's not appropriate to empower others in a superior position to the board so that we cannot make motions and discuss, and yet based on public feedback, they can make changes.
But that's the public, that's a lot of people.
Are you
who-
saying the timing was subsequent to the time that we could respond to a change?
So you'll recall that there were 2 public feedback windows. The first was prior to the revision process overall, and all of that feedback was given to the committees to develop their initial recommendations, which we presented to you beginning in October through December of this last year. When the final recommendations came forward during that time, the committees, that public feedback window was open again, and the board was able to provide any feedback at that point in addition to what the public feedback opportunity was. And the committees took all of that and produced their final recommendations, which are coming forward to you today. So the addition that was of that inquiry question came following the initial public feedback window, where there was a request for a more balanced, as the recommendation came forward, approach to this.
So was the change made and then there was no longer an opportunity for feedback from the board?
So the change was made. What is in your document today is what was presented to you and provided to you back in March.
Okay.
And
So
so
we did
there
have
is no
subsequent
change.
opportunity
Yeah, there's no
to make a
change since
change.
March.
And I agree with you, Mr. Durham, that that's how it should be, but we did have the option subsequent to that. Catching it is another challenge. As I understand it, I do not have a motion for amendment number 1, so can we move on to amendment number 2,
That's
please?
correct.
Anybody? Board member Shuffle. I believe it's yours, isn't it? Or do I have
Yes.
this backwards? Would you be good enough to make the motion?
Yeah, I think actually the committee did address this, am I correct?
Right.
You've already
We
changed
still,
it.
but we still need,
have to make
we
that.
still need to vote on it, is my understanding. Is that correct?
So to clarify, the committee does agree with this addition. So the committee will only make that change if the board votes for this amendment. But the committee does agree that wherever parents or trusted adult is used, that we include the word parent as well.
Then I make a motion that with the recommendation of the committee, supported by this amendment, be accepted as part of the standard.
Second.
Thank you. So Board Member Shuffle, on the top, I think you've got a proposed motions that'll help you the next time I pull this on you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Cordial, would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Durham?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle?
Yes.
Oops. Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder?
That was out of order.
That was totally out of order.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
All right, amendment number 3.
I'll move amendment number 3, Madam Chair, and suggest that we strike inquiry question, should medical research focus on promoting wellness or finding cures for known diseases. It's a choice that doesn't need to be made. It's it's unnecessary, and so I'll make that motion.
Was that number 3? I'm
That's- yeah,
sadly,
number
sadly,
3.
I'm a wee bit lost. Okay.
So am I.
Yeah. Somebody want to second that, please? Thank you. Ms. Cordial?
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Strike number 5. Yes.
Thank you.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
I just wanted to ask, Madam Chairwoman, we went so quickly from the motion to the vote. Because we have such a volume of proposed amendments, I was wondering if we could get clarification about the committee's position before each vote.
Point of order.
They did agree.
Okay, then yes.
Did agree.
Thank you.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
All right. Mr. Durham, I think motion number 4 might also be yours. Am I right?
It is, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think there's been, I think this has been accepted in part by the committee and rejected in part by the committee. If I understand the objections, they've been based on age appropriateness. I would suggest that whenever, I don't care what age you're talking about alcohol and tobacco, it's just as appropriate to talk about marijuana at that age and illegal drugs. And I think the idea, the attempt to assert that the use of the term illegal drugs is unnecessary because all drugs are illegal if you're under the age of 18, I think is clever, but I think everybody knows really what we're trying to get at here, and what we're trying to get at is everybody knows what illegal drugs are, and the rather fine distinction of whether they happen to be illegal, all drugs are illegal for under 18 and don't need to be mentioned, I think is really too cute by half. So I would, I think, and I do think the other issue is should this phrase be inserted every place where they do talk about alcohol and tobacco. I can't, for the life of me, see the reason why you wouldn't include marijuana, illegal drugs, and prescription drugs. So I'm going to make the motion as it was originally intended, which is not just that which was accepted by the committee, but to insert it every place that it occurs.
Yeah, that's what I assumed you.
Yes.
Okay. And so.
Is there a second? Thank you. Go ahead. Board
Okay.
Member Flores.
I want to ask if they could be excluded from the early elementary grades. Because I think there's the comprehension and there's so many other things that curriculum needs. So can they be excluded? Did the committee agree to exclude it from lower grades?
The committee felt that the language was important to be concise throughout and to be similar throughout the.
So you agree with prescription drugs, marijuana, and all that throughout? I thought I heard you say
No.
that there were instances where you thought it appropriate and instances where you thought it wasn't appropriate. Wasn't that what you said before?
I'm sorry, so the committee agreed to include marijuana throughout, but we don't feel it's appropriate to also include illegal drugs and the other wording that was mentioned as well throughout.
Okay. And you want it all?
Correct.
Okay.
So the motion is Mr. Durham's motion throughout the comprehensive health standards, wherever the phrase alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs is used. I propose it be modified to read marijuana, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Am I correct, Mr.
That is
Chair?
correct.
And that was seconded by Board Member Shuffle. Okay. Any more discussion? Please call the vote.
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
No.
Board Member Goff.
No.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-2.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I would entertain a motion now to approve the comprehensive health and physical education standards as amended.
Is there any discussion at this point?
Yeah, but let's do the motion and then, yes, please, let's
Okay,
have a discussion.
sorry.
Is anybody willing to move that we approve the standards, comprehensive health and physical education standards as amended? Board Member McClellan.
I move to approve the adoption of the revisions to the Colorado Academic Standards concerning comprehensive health and physical education as amended.
It's a proper motion, thank you.
I second it.
Thank you. Discussion. Board Member Rankin.
So the first thing I'd like to address is obesity. I think it's the #1 health issue that we have in America that has been there for a long time. In high school, 25% of the students that apply for the military are turned down because of obesity issues, just things like that. From 1990 to now, Colorado's the healthiest state in the nation, but it's going up. You know, even though we're 22%, other states are 37%. And this is a real concern. The word is used once in the comprehensive health standards. I'd like to object to the name comprehensive health when we're dealing with so many other things that are not a part of health, in my opinion. I have a lot more, but I'll rest for right now.
Any further discussion? Mr. Durham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the problem, and I really want to make some inquiries, because I appreciate the fact that the committee believes that these standards should promote evidence-based outcomes. And it's my understanding that these standards have been tweaked. They haven't been massively revised. Is that correct, Dr. Colesman?
That's correct.
So essentially, we've had these standards in place for 8 years. There are some changes here since.
So to clarify, the first year that the standards were implemented was the 2013-14 school year.
So when were they adopted by the board?
They
12?
adopted in both 2009 and 10, and districts had through 2013-14 to transition to the new
So-
standards.
So we've had these in front of us at least as a guideline for 8 years, give or take. And
5 years.
2010, but
Right.
2013 since they were supposed to be implemented. I think either way the point remains the same. I mean, and I think if you were to look at these standards and say, well, are they producing positive outcomes that can be documented and we can start through them, apparently based on at least the traffic in the current culture, one would believe that bullying is on the increase. And the word bully and bullying, those are used 26 and 23 times, while the word obesity is used once. So apparently these standards have not been effective in reducing bullying. I agree with Ms. Rankin. I don't think you can't read anything about health that doesn't clearly say that the #1 health problem facing America and also young Americans is obesity. And yet there really in the health standards is really no attempt or no obvious attempt to deal with that. The word diet's mentioned 25 times. But then you get into the things that these standards tend to emphasize, and I would say even though they attempt to emphasize them, those aren't working either, because social, emotional, and emotion are used 159 times. 152 times for emotional, 188 times for emotion. So somehow, in an attempt, it would appear that these standards are very heavy on mental health, and it would appear based on all the evidence that we are apparently failing to achieve any improvement in mental health outcomes in our schools. And you can just pick the evidentiary points you'd like to look at, but I would say that this might fit the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I don't think these standards have been effective. First of all, I don't think they address the real health problems we're facing. And I think it's probably safe to say and to suggest to all of you that there is a reason why parents are somewhat concerned about standards like these, that somehow the education system is somehow taking over responsibility for social adjustment, emotional adjustment, and emotional well-being. And I think many parents, getting back to some comments earlier, think that that's their job. So, and if the state and the school districts are trying to accomplish this, it would appear that they are failing to accomplish improvements in outcome. And if these are to be outcome-supported standards, we should be able to see some evidence of improvement. And if there is any evidence of improvement in any of these over the last 5 years, over the last 8 years, I'd like to, somebody should be able to quote a number of statistics to demonstrate that. And I've yet to see any statistics that would suggest that our student population is less fragile. In fact, I would think they're more fragile. And then finally getting to, I think an important issue was raised and is not dealt with at all in these health standards, but the use of electronic devices and FaceTimes and the potential problems created by that, they don't appear to be addressed in these standards, and if they're addressed, they're not addressed very effectively. So I would say that the board ought to reject these standards, and this is one where we ought to go back to the drawing board and have standards that really address the real problems that I believe students are facing. And I believe those start, frankly, with electronic devices and FaceTime. I think those are extraordinarily dangerous, and the overuse of those devices and the overuse of the internet, I think we have yet to see the particularly bad outcome we're going to get on this. So I think we ought to go back to the drawing board on these standards and start over. So I intend to vote no on the health and physical education standards.
Thank you. Other comments? Board Member McClellan.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to once again thank the committee members and the staff who support the work of the committee for what I think was a well-organized process. And I did feel like we had ample time to get our thoughts and our observations and suggestions considered. And in fact, I'm really grateful to have had a chance to interface with constituency groups who had specific interests and were able to come forward to the respective committees timely to get those concerns heard. I appreciate the process. I think it was effective. And I thank you again for the work that you put in to making sure that we're reshaping these standards for this period of revision. And I look forward to voting yes. Thank you.
Board Member Flores.
I think to make great assumptions that that we are, as a state, gaining weight and such. I mean, if you look at the number of people that have moved into the state, and I'm not saying that they're the ones responsible, I'm saying that there are so many factors that are in play here that one can't make generalizations about this. I mean, we have a president in the White House right now who has made it, let's say, easier for people to bully, and I think everybody's watching, and kids are watching. And possibly that could be a reason for bullying, not our standards. I think I agree with you on a point as far as what we have as media, so much media. I really feel that we should keep media at a minimum. Telephones should be picked up at the beginning of class, and they should be given out at the end of the class. And I think that we would do we would have more learning if that were to take place. And I'm just hoping that the legislature has that rule. But right now, the schools, have the ability to do that. And the research is coming out that indeed, when schools take over media and, control the media that's used by students, learning happens in those schools. So I just wanted to make that known. Thank you.
I have a question. Based on a lot of the public comment we had today, our standards that we may or may not adopt this time around, let's hope we do, we don't revise them for another 6 years, according to, I believe, the legislation. Is there a prohibition against any modifications between those times? For example, should the board take on the issue of screen time or some of the other items that were suggested to us, and we actually felt that there was something in the standards that could guide? I have to keep in mind that school districts make a lot of these decisions, but if there's some guidance that we could provide and put into the health standards, can we do that? Or are we prohibited? Don't kill me, please don't kill me. But
So the statute reads that on or before July 1 of 2018 and every 6 years thereafter, the board shall review and revise the standards. So there would be nothing to prohibit the board from
technically, we could make a
correct.
modification.
That's correct. But also to clarify that there are references to screen time throughout the comprehensive health standards as well.
Right, and that's probably where we should start, if it's the pleasure of the board to have this discussion. But there's also there are changing results in the research over time. I heard one parent, I think, mention some of the recommendations from pediatric groups, and I know that's been changing. Every time I turn around, it seems like there's a different recommendation. So this is an area that's really not probably ever going to be completely decided, but on the other hand, we probably have a responsibility to keep our eye on it and to perhaps learn more about it. And so if in fact we find there's something missing, we do have that opportunity to open that up.
That's correct.
Knowing full well that would not please you in terms of your workload.
It is the board's discretion
Thank
as
you.
to how we proceed.
Okay, so with that, I'm much more comfortable voting, knowing that we are not constrained to having this conversation, and maybe should put it on this very long list of ideas that I've been coming up with. Board Member Flores.
But to know that school districts already have that ability.
I completely agree. They
And
do have discretion. I don't know if they have the knowledge, and if there's an
Right.
opportunity for us to provide some guidance.
So
That would be our
school districts that are out there, you have the ability to curb screen time and others. Or do you want to make it better?
Board Member Durham.
No, I think I want to agree with Dr. Flores on this, that, and I was going to say it in my concluding remarks, but I would encourage districts to disregard these standards if adopted as much as possible. I think they have every bit of much possibility to be as harmful as being helpful, and that they should look at their own needs in a district. And if they have problems with suicides, which have been increasing, if they have problems with drugs and marijuana, which have been increasing, if they believe they have problems that are driven by excessive use of screen times, that they develop their own standards that focus on those issues. We don't test these standards. There's no enforcement of these standards. Local control exists for a reason in this state, And I think these standards provide a particularly good opportunity for local districts to exercise good judgment and to modify them in a way that makes more sense for them.
I'm going to agree and disagree with you. I'm not ever going to suggest that these standards be ignored, but they are the floor.
Yeah.
Any district can meet and exceed these standards, and therein lies the opportunity that you described.
That's right.
Thank you. Are we ready to call for the vote? Please, Ms. Cordial.
Board Member Durham?
No.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
No.
Board Member Scheffel?
No.
Board Member Schroeder?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 4-3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Colesman, do I get to throw this back at you now, or
Guess to go to Mr. Cobb at this point.
Mr. Cobb?
Yeah, how are you?
Sorry.
You're okay. We just need to make a quick change here with our reading, writing,
Sure, I
communicating
think
standards
maybe
committee.
we should do a paper change here too, since I got thoroughly confused. The next one is reading and writing.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's not.
It's a small thing.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
It's actually, because the TV.
All right, busy. Okay, you're fired.
I'm honored.
Me too. I just wish I were making yours.
I'm gonna do it.
Take your checks with you.
Checks in the mail back.
So we're okay.
Actually, I wish I were making the Mississippi superintendent.
Go ahead, Mr. Cobb.
Thanks.
Dr.
Madam
Cobb,
Chair, it's my
sorry.
pleasure to introduce our guest from the Reading, Writing, and Communicating Committee. To my right is Zach Chase. He is the District Curriculum Coordinator for St. Vrain Valley School Districts. To his right is our elementary team lead, Marion Wesley, who's a teacher in Cheyenne Mountain School District 12. Crystal Savatke Smith, unfortunately, was unable to make it today. However, to Dr. Colesman's right is Vince Puzik. He is our Reading, Writing, and Communicating Standards Content Specialist. And we'll follow the exact same format as the last committee. I will turn it over to our committee chairs, who will read the committee responses to the proposed amendments.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Madam Chair,
Yes, thank you.
members of the committee, we had 4 proposed amendments. I'm going to work through them in pretty short order. For Amendment 1, regarding the proportion of informational and literary texts, the committee agrees with the amendment. Amendment 2, regarding foundational skills, the committee agrees with the amendment. And Amendment 3, regarding close reading and analysis and other analysis of texts, the committee agrees with the amendment. And Amendment 4, regarding process, conventions, syntax, and skill development, the committee agrees with the amendment.
Great, thank you. So it's my understanding that each of these amendments, Dr. Scheffel, are items that provide language at the front of the standards in order to be more explanatory.
Yes.
And that's great. So would you be kind enough to, unless you have some more comments to make about the amendments,
No.
go ahead and make some motions.
I move to adopt Amendment 1 as indicated in the proposed amendments document.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate to move amendments 1 through 4? It's a
Yeah,
substitute
let's
motion.
just do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
That takes care of a couple pages here.
Yep.
Do you want to try that again?
So I move to adopt Amendments 1, 2, 3, and 4 as indicated on the proposed amendments document for reading, writing, and communication standards.
Thank
I
you.
second that.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, that passes unanimously. So now I need a motion, please, to adopt the reading, writing, and communication standards as amended. Please. Board Member McClellan?
I move to approve the adoption of the revisions to the Colorado Academic Standards concerning reading, writing, and communicating standards as amended.
Second? Do I have a second?
I'll second it so we can discuss.
Thank you. Now let's have a
Okay.
discussion, please.
Okay, one of the things I think that Dr. Shuffle and I have been discussing is that too often language arts teachers or language arts teachers are not using the time, are feeling guilty because they feel that they have to use that time, part of that time, to read factual information documents as opposed to literature. And I think that needs to be made more clear, maybe at the very beginning, that that time should be used for literary readings. And not that we don't want a good biography or whatever, but that time, they should not feel guilty, because they want to read that particular novel or that short story or that poetry that is so important. And that time should be used for that by language arts teachers and language teachers. So just a little more at the very beginning about that. Because we've heard from teachers that, either they've been getting criticized or they feel that they should be doing, other things. And I think the board wants to make it clear, or at least the both of us want to make it clear, that that time should be allowed and used for literary measures or literary works.
May I,
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Please, yes.
The committee agreed as part of that conversation, and so Dr. Shuffle's Amendment 1 was well received by the committee around those percentages.
Right, thank you. Board Member Goff, did you have some comments you wanted to make?
No, not
Okay.
Not at this time.
We call for a vote. Everybody ready? Anybody opposed? Oh, we should call the roll? Yeah, standards. We should call the roll. Sorry.
Board Member Durham?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle?
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Musical chairs. Thank you, by the way, folks. I
Thank
keep
you.
forgetting to.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all. Whoops, were we, we have to go back. To the beginning.
Yeah.
The order was
out of
different.
order. Yep, you're right.
We get this is next. Tell me what?
That's half the rule.
Okay. As long as it's not more.
Look at us being
So we do not have.
That's correct.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Dr. Cobb, please.
Thank you very much. Introducing our science committee, 2 seats over from me is John Ilfson. He is an assistant to the principal in Cherry Creek School District. To my immediate right is Dr. Charlie Warren. He's of the University of Northern Colorado and a teacher education licensure officer. And to Dr. Colesman's right is Dr. Joanna Bruno. She is our content specialist. For this particular content area, there are no proposed amendments, and so I will turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and welcome back. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. There are no amendments, so the motion would be the adoption of the science standards. It might be the first motion.
No,
We
I
got a
don't think
little
it's
bit
there.
out of order, didn't we?
Yeah, this one's a little bit out of order.
So backtrack just a
Back
bit.
to the first. Sorry, I
Thank
thought
you.
we were
Okay.
taking science first. My apologies.
Thank you. Board Member McClellan.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the adoption of the revisions to the Colorado Academic Standards concerning science.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Goff, thank you. Discussion. Any discussion?
No.
Board Member Rankin.
Yeah, I will vote against this because of a few things. The implicit bias with climate change used 16 times, the cost to rural schools to implement this program. The proposed standards will hurt students by forcing teachers to adapt to content that they have not specialized in. They need to learn about it. Chemistry and physics are not addressed, and basically Common Core. I would have made a motion, and I'm sorry, I wasn't quick on that, of maintaining the standards we have already adopted, so that those that want to use this or transition into it would have an opportunity to do so. In my smaller districts, that is going to be very, very difficult, and I'm sorry I missed that motion on that one.
Okay.
Thank you,
Board
Madam
Member
Chair. Dr. Holzman, I have a question. We were given a list, I think, early on of districts that had already converted to this next generation science standards, and I don't remember how many there were, but something tells me like 17. Is that a number that? How's my memory?
So Dr. Bruno is looking that up. It's in the teens.
It's in it. So I mean, so I guess the question I have is that those districts that have converted voluntarily to these new standards, have they on our statewide standardized test, are those districts performing above or below where they would be expected to perform?
We haven't done that type of, excuse me, Madam Chair.
Please.
We haven't done that specific analysis on districts that have voluntarily moved to the next generation science standards. A lot of districts have incorporated components of the framework, but we haven't done any type of analysis pulling out specific districts.
Well, I think this is a clear demonstration of the view of at least some districts and many districts of state standards, in that they think they have something better, and this is one we even test. And what I was hoping is there'd been some comparison of the results, because one of the reasons that was given why we could not maintain two standards or simply allow districts to choose between the two was there is a test, and somehow the test has to be modified in some way. But there's no way to measure that, or there's no way, at least we haven't measured it, and it could be measured, but we haven't done it yet, or maybe we have these districts haven't been on the new standards long enough. Is that correct?
So the next generation science standards were published in 2013, and so we'd have to look at when they were implemented by different districts. I don't know if our chairs know any more information about implementation and any sort of achievement.
We received a letter or a memo or something like that, and I apologize for the lack of clarity, from DPS, in which they included a chart, and it was a chart by year in the process of moving to next gen science standards and some of the professional development that was expected. And I don't have it with me, but it was in the materials that I read. And so, if I'm not mistaken, they were expecting to be fully implementing it at the same time that we would be adopting it. But I believe that was an attempt on their part to let us know that it takes a while. I think their effort was over some period of time. I would be happy to dig that out if that would be helpful.
I think I remember it, but that was...
We did get something, and it did remind me that this is not any kind of an overnight shift. And I think as a department and as a board, we need to keep that in mind and maybe learn from them the resources that they were able to acquire that we might be able to share with district. I mean, this isn't going to happen overnight.
No.
This is a more dramatic change than any of our other standards.
Well, it's, I question the need to change at all if districts are going to do it on their own, number one. And I think, you know, digging into what I think these, rather than the next generation, they're just simply politically correct standards, and I suspect they will yield a result that doesn't educate children as well as the existing standards, simply because they're long on, or short on content and long on experimentation, and they're not substantive, they're formative in nature. So, and I would like to make some inquiries. You gentlemen appear to be old enough to remember the 50s and 60s a little bit, maybe. Do you remember the climate crisis of the time, which was well written about and well talked about? Do you remember that, what it was?
No.
Yes. Well, the great fear of all the climatologists in the late 50s and 60s was that the world was entering another ice age. You don't remember that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of literature about it, a lot of discussion about it, a lot of evidence about how the Earth was cooling. You don't remember that? It's remarkable how we conveniently forget things that are not, and I don't accuse you of conveniently forgetting, but that always stuck in my mind because I'm not one who likes the cold. So, you know, that proved to be incorrect, that all the speculation and evidence we were entering an ice age has proven to be incorrect, at least in the short term.
For the moment.
You know, could be we're about to enter it and we just don't know it yet. But I think the problem with the constant references to climate change and global warming, really, you know, you have to look at a number of elements. One is the Earth getting warmer? I think there's evidence, certainly in the last 10 years, that wasn't the case. It seemed to be pretty stable, absent the last 2 years. Two, are those changes somehow out of the historic norm, given the millions of years of climate changes, that some of which can be documented and explored in geologic records? And three, then, are those changes man-made? When you look at the recent volcanic eruption in Central America, put more CO2 into the air than all of human activity this year. So there are plenty of reasons to question this article of faith that appears to be being pushed on our children, that somehow the polar bears are in danger. So I really object to that. I am one of those people who, A, I don't think climate change has been proven. B, if it is taking place, is it taking place at a rate that is sufficiently out of the historic geologic norm to be concerned? And three, is it being caused by man, or was it caused this year by the volcanic eruption in Central America? So.
Which Central America? I mean, are you talking about the
Cent-
one that disappeared, the
white-
dinosaurs?
No, I'm talking about the one about a month ago or 3 weeks ago that wiped
weeks
out,
ago, yeah.
killed 100 and some people in Guatemala.
Or what about the one in Hawaii?
Or the one in Hawaii, although that's not been so far it's not been it's been I guess that is an eruption of sorts, but. So, you know, it's convenient to overlook the fact that the Earth, we were all concerned about the Earth cooling, and I must be older than you guys, that's why I remember back a little further. It's convenient not to forget that was the primary concern of the weather and climatologist people in the 50s and 60s. It's convenient to forget that. And it's convenient to ignore the fact that one volcano spewed more CO2 into the air than all of the human activities that have taken place this year. It's convenient to overlook those things, and yet somehow this is treated as gospel. I intend to vote against these standards. Not only are they expensive to implement, I think they are scientifically inaccurate, and I think they will lead to a poorer outcome for our children because they are process-oriented and not knowledge-oriented.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin?
I just want to make something clear. If these are not approved today, that still allows the new standards to be used in the classroom. Is that not correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. So if they are not approved, then our other districts that want to move in this direction will be able to work on it and get up to speed. Those that already have implemented it can continue on. Anyone that wants to work to other standards, if they send those in to CDE, if they are equal to or better than the ones we already have, they're allowed to use those too.
So correct, districts need to either meet or exceed the standards
Right.
adopted by the state board.
Okay, so we have a lot of options available if they are voted down. If they are voted in, we only have one option. And I just wanted to stress that.
Any more comments? Board Member Sheffield?
Yeah, I just have spent a lot of time reading through the standards, and I just feel that, as Board Member Durham suggested, it's just such a process focus, and the content is not rigorous and robust as it should be, and the lack of connection to mathematical skills. Science and math are so inextricably woven together that I don't feel the standards show those relationships in the depth that they need to. So I do not feel these are an improvement on our current standards.
Board Member McLeod?
I just wanted to take a moment once again to thank the members of the committee for the hard work that they put into this and for the gift of your expertise and your professional training that you brought to this task. I will be a yes vote today, and I thank you as well as the staff who supported your efforts for bringing these updated standards to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Sorry. Again, thank you committee as well. I will be voting yes on these standards, and I look toward the day when we can have a conversation, whether it's among the board or whether it's among our constituents, among our colleagues at the professional state level and so forth, about whatever journey we can make to arrive at a clearer understanding of curriculum versus standards versus those two things, and then the big umbrella over that is what techniques, strategies, plans, approaches are used in classrooms and agreed to. I think having a set of standards as a guideline, a guidebook, is where some of us tend to think first. So in my experience, both as a classroom teacher in the early days of using standards, in my work in my own school districts and with other teachers on standards, continuing on to today, at the board level, when we're talking about what are we adopting as a statewide message or set of aspirations. That's where I have to go first. That's what I know best. I find it interesting that of all the communication we got, comments, constituent-wise, I did not, and I got some from all over the state of Colorado. Several were from people who live, work, and have kids in school in Congressional District 7. So that's a pretty good territory too. But I got them from all over. I find it most interesting that not one letter, and this was not a set of form letters by and large, not one said, keep us where we are.
Yeah.
We can find a way to move us into this new, set of approaches. Most people expressed outright that they felt comfortable with the amount of resources they have now, that they could adapt, that they will plan over a couple of years of what we know anyway as transition, that they will make it work. And they were enthused about the possibilities presented here. Districts can, if the next gen standards are adopted here at this level, yes, districts can exceed them in their own right. I guess another rhetorical question only for now, What's meant by exceed? What does it look like to have a set of standards that exceeds something? You know, and maybe in somebody's mind that means we've got a new set of standards. Exceeding means incorporating some of the things from the current set of standards that are then become part of the technique, part of the plan, part of the approach that will produce results that people aim and set goals for. Talking to you, you know what I'm saying. But I just think it's time to stop and think. It is ultimately school districts, classrooms, homes, parent and family decisions about how they're going to go about learning in their family and what's important to them, and how are you going to meet the goals and expectations that we all have for you. That's at their level. But back to my original statement, someday, hopefully, maybe, we will talk about a better understanding of what's meant by a standard and what's meant by the curriculum, and the basic everyday work that goes into carrying out our plans. So yes, I will be voting to adapt and adopt the standards, and I thank you again for all of your many months and years of service to this. Thank you.
Board Member Flores.
I just wanted to make this statement, and that was that when I went through the standards, the science standards, the first time, I was really concerned because of the amount of money that would be spent in this endeavor, especially with tools and such needed in the elementary schools. But I was very surprised to hear that many teachers did respond or did approach me and said that they had the tools, that wasn't going to be a big problem, and that they could do it, and that they had the tools. And maybe it was my bare classrooms in some of these schools that I taught at, where there wasn't much that I was speaking about, and not the whole of Colorado that may have more of these tools than at first I surmised. So I'm glad that that's the case. Thank you so very much for this.
Thank you. Board Member Durham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Goff, actually, thank you for clarifying my thinking on this, because I think the issue, the real issue is, why is the reliance on climate change not curricula? It certainly isn't a standard. It's a curricula if that's something you want to teach about, but it doesn't have anything to do with the principles, the underlying principles that probably need to be known in order to determine whether or not there is climate change, and yet it is used as a scientific, factual standard. Why is it not curricula? Anyone?
The climate change was in the 2008 standards as well, and the board did look at all the concepts and topics that were brought from 2008 as well as the ones that were being introduced here, and they felt that it was necessary to keep it in the standards.
But is it curricula or is it standards?
It is part of our standards.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think that it's curriculum, it's more appropriately labeled curriculum, because I think Ms. Goff just hit it on the head. What is the standard? The standard is you have to believe that there is climate change. Is that standard?
Well,
within the standards, they're asked to investigate and look at evidence around climate change.
So it's not a standard, it's a curricula then. It's an inquiry tool that's a curricula, it's curriculum, it's not a standard.
Throughout the entire process of developing the standards, going back to even before 2008 standards, within the standards there are concepts and topics that are brought into the actual standards. So when we get to curriculum, it's more about how it's being taught and the standards are more about what's being taught. And so climate change is part of the what is being taught, along with Newton's laws, along with energy, along with a whole list of other concepts and topics that are woven throughout the standards.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm also mulling over Ms. Goff's comment about exceeding our standards. I'm just going to guess that those districts that have worked to exceed Colorado standards have probably stuck in curriculum and are able to demonstrate to their community some of the knowledge that they want their students to. I mean, we haven't looked at that, but we've had a district or two that's talked about that their standards exceed. I just think this is a more difficult concept than that most of us can put our hands around. Were we a state where we could be looking at curriculum, some of these concerns that we have, that kids are not going to get certain knowledge, would not be so great, that we would have the comfort to know not just what we expect kids to know, but how they're going to be taught, as well as the strategies, which is the third piece of the strategies of how they're taught.
Well, let's go to
it's
textbooks
complex.
then.
Let's not go to textbooks. Let's not be Texas. But it does make it hard. Yeah, it does make it hard. We do have a constitution, and it. Actually, I'd like to. I'd love to sometime see a court case where we do muddle it up a little bit, and somebody sues us for requiring curriculum. I mean, we already do it in one area.
Where?
Civics. We require. Might be interesting. I don't know what the courts would actually find. What can we do and what can we not do?
Very positivist. It's on the Constitution and it's on laws.
Well, but it's unclear in the Constitution what's the responsibility at the local level and what's textbooks. Yes,
You know,
but in terms of curriculum,
into tangents. I'm sorry, Chairman.
You're right. That's all right.
Let's get to the vote because I'm hungry.
Well, that settles it. I just would remind the chair there are two of them when you talk about constitutions.
Well,
In terms of education, Mr. Durham?
we forgot the story.
I know, the U.S. Constitution does not
Just
rule.
there are two.
Yeah, okay. It is time for lunch. Please call the vote.
Board Member Durham.
No.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
No.
Board Member Shuffle.
No.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
That motion passes 4-3.
Our sincere thanks to all the committees and to the staff for all this work.
Thank you.
So next steps prior to lunch, we just wanted to, first of all, we acknowledge all of the hard work of the committees. As every committee chair has come forward, they've indicated that they have gone way beyond the number of hours that we indicated. That's our way of, we try to estimate as best as possible the number of hours that this process takes, but no matter what, our committees work much harder than we ever anticipate, and we want to thank each and every committee chairperson and all of the committee members. There is a celebration for the committees this coming Monday. We'll be sending you information about that if you would like to attend. But I also want to acknowledge the very hard work of our standards and instructional support staff. So that includes our leadership of Carol Gates, who's here in the audience, Dr. Joanna Bruno, Dr. Jamie Hurley, Vince Pusick, our reading, writing, communicating specialist who is retiring within, he has actually a little advent calendar, is counting down the days for his retirement. Dr. Stephanie Hartman, Raymond Johnson, Christine Lieb, Dr. Donna Goodwin, Lulu Buck, Carla Aguilar, and Judy Hofmeister. These content specialists and their leader, Carol Gates, have put in countless hours way beyond those of our chairpersons, keeping this process going, and we are forever in their gratitude, in their debt for all of their hard work. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe our next item is an exec session. May I have a motion, please, to go into exec session? Somebody?
Let's go into exec.
I make a motion, we go into
That's not a motion,
executive
but that works for
session.
me. Second. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Would you like me to
Good
read
go.
a
Please read your stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
An executive session has been noticed for today's State Board meeting in conformance with 24-6-4023A CRS to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to 24-6-4023A Roman numeral 2 CRS. Matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or rules or state statutes pursuant to 24-6-4023A Roman numeral 3 CRS.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, if the rurals really were concerned about this, we would have heard it.